So today's lesson we're going to be looking at the role of important people and power structures. So we're going to look at who important people are in Islam and why they're important, and also what the power structures are and how they've influenced the religion. So the most important person in Islam is Muhammad. As we know, he's seen as the last prophet and is the man who brought God's word to Muslims. Jesus Christ is also considered to be significant to Islam, as he is also seen by Muslims as being one of the holy prophets who brought God's revelation to Muslims and to people. Also, as Islam is based off Judaism and Christianity, the other prophets found in Judaism and Christianity are also important in Islam, like Moses. However, as Islam is a religion of equality and that no one person has a closer connection with God, Islam is lacking in important people and power structures. So whilst Abu Bakr and Ali are seen as being the main proponents of Sunni or Shia Islam, they are not given an elevated status, and they are only measured by their roles in narrating important hadiths. They are not viewed as being better than any other person. So as already mentioned, Islam lacks important peoples and power structures due to core beliefs in equality and the nature of human relationships with God. So they believe that all humans have their own personal connection with God, and that there's no need for someone else in there. So Muslims believe in direct communication with God for each individual people, and thus human intermediaries, so people who speak for or speak to God for you, are not necessary. Consequently, there are no priests, popes, holy men, or saints in Islam. Thus, every Muslim is equal to God and has equal access. Therefore, any Muslim of good character that is knowledgeable in the scripts can lead prayer, which is called an imam. Also, women can lead prayers, but only those of other women and not men. Therefore, Islam recognizes no authoritative source of doctrinal interpretation like the Pope. Because of this, there is no authoritative source of doctrinal interpretation. So the lack of this authoritative interpretation means that Islam lacks in clear hierarchy, like the Pope, which means anyone can interpret the Quran and other religious scriptures any way they like. This makes Islam more democratic and egalitarian, as there's no clear person that has a greater relationship with God than any other person. However, as anyone can interpret the religion, it makes Islam more susceptible to extremist interpretations like ISIS and Al-Qaeda, as there is no higher authority to turn to when their interpretations contradict the religion itself. This is especially in the case where there is legitimacy like Afghanistan and Pakistan and also some areas of Afghanistan. However, the historical context of Islam, coupled with the structure and organization of many Islamic societies and the intertwining of everyday life and religious practice, has shaped the power structures for many Muslims globally. So what I was talking about previously was the pure understandings of Islam as the religion. However, implementing Islam in everyday life, what you've got on paper and what actually happens, can sometimes differ greatly. And because of some of the other parts of Islam that sees that religion should exist in every facet of their daily life, as well as the fact that they have those religious laws that kind of enable religion to exist in their everyday life, this has created power structures within the religion, so going against what some of their beliefs are. So what we're going to go through first is like Sunni Islam as well as Shia Islam, so looking at the two main sects of Islam to understand their own power structures, and then we'll look at Islamic nations and power structures within them. So Sunni Islam places its emphasis on the Quran and not persons. As we've already learnt, they believe that the revelation stopped with Muhammad, thus all Muslims should just follow the Quran for their beliefs, values and practices. Thus Sunni imams are seen as prayer leaders only and not as authoritative interpretations of religion. What they say can and is challenged, and they can be asked to step down at any time and be replaced. Due to the high illiteracy rates of some Islamic nations, mullahs have also been given a role to help with religious guidance based on their own interpretations to those who are unable to read the Quran. So remember Afghanistan. So again, this is kind of the current context of Islam and trying to implement its practices. If you can't read the Quran, then you can't understand it. So mullahs have been culturally and socially created to kind of fill that void. So theoretically, though, their position is not a given, as they are there because they are knowledgeable in the text. However, mullahs have been given a significant authority, and the only religious understandings illiterate Muslims have are based on their interpretations, thus making it harder to challenge them. And so therefore mullahs are kind of like whilst they're only there because of their understandings and theoretically can be easily replaced, they kind of have a stronghold in these illiterate areas because it's hard to challenge them. However, Islamic leadership is different for Shia Muslims. As we already know, Shia Muslims believe that there is an infallible imam for every generation of Muslims, and that the 12th and last imam disappeared mysteriously in 878 CE. Since that time, the body of religious scholars known as the ulema have taken over his position, and until he takes over as Mahdi, which is known as the expected one, they are in control. So in countries like Iran, Egypt, and Iraq, ayatollahs are members of that ulema that have taken over and are seen as the leaders of Islam for their followers. However, they too must be knowledgeable of the Quran as well as the Sharia and the Sunnahs, and are not gender specific and have at times been women. So beyond the ayatollahs and imams, there is a clear void in power structures within Islam. Couple this with the belief that Islam should be intertwined with daily life and that the Sharia has both civil and religious law. Islamic governments in many non-secular nations have taken a leadership role within Islam. Many Islamic governments guide on doctrinal interpretation and enforce their own interpretations by demanding strict adherence to the religious laws in the country, even when their own interpretations contradict Islamic beliefs and values, which I'm going to go through in a second. This can be seen in countries like Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, and Afghanistan, where there are significant restrictions on clothing, movements, and work of women due to the government's religious interpretations, which contradict several Islamic values and beliefs like equality, as they are holding their own interpretations of the religion over others, as well as forcing women to live a different life to men. Also, the belief that the individual makes choices of their life based on their own relationship with God, so choosing to cover oneself is seen as a personal choice for many Muslims and should not be forced. So therefore, by enshrining women cover themselves in these countries, they're really challenging that religious belief. So just to kind of sum this all up, doctrinally and like in the text, Islam does not recognize leadership. But you have clear breakdowns of that within Shia and Sunni Islam due to the historical context over the time, which kind of shaped their interpretations of their religion. And also because of this void and the expectation that as a Muslim you will intertwine your daily life, governments have kind of been slotted in. It's been kind of a natural progression for a lot of these Islamic countries to have governments be the Islamic leaders, because they are the ones that will enforce Sharia law, and so they've used that kind of as a basis to interpret their religion and therefore enforce that interpretations on the people in their countries.